Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bouncing Back, the Personal Resilience Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. Let's get started. Hi everyone and welcome back. I am your host Tia Harmer and today we are going to be discussing personal resilience and rebranding failure to build self-confidence. I am here with Jaz Ampaw-Farr. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
That's great. So thank you so much for being here. I am so excited about this episode. I dare say this is the show that I am the most excited about so far.
Oh, you say that to everybody, Tia.
No, don't. The first time I saw Jaz was in a TED Talk a couple years ago, and I was absolutely blown away by how enthusiastic she is about education and bravery and just the passion. You can make everyone laugh and make everyone cry. I know you brought me to tears in the TED Talk. It was amazing. So for those who haven't watched it, I highly recommend. But for those who don't know you, Jaz, do you mind explaining a bit about who you are and what it is you do?
Yes, I am a world-class reframer. That's who I am. Just sort of listening to that story. In my TEDx, I kind of share the story of who I was as a child, growing up on the streets and in foster care and in an abusive situation, and how the reframing of the story that was landed on me has meant that today I'm an international speaker, I'm an author, I'm a CEO, I'm a phenomenal human female, I look a bit like Beyonce, and I'm fulfilled and happy. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, that I'm not, this isn't pretend, I should be
Mm,
dead, I should be broken. And I'm actually a leader who, I'm not the best, but I encourage others to be their best.
that is
So
amazing.
it's the kind of, human first nature of who I am is the thing that I'm most proud of.
That's incredible. So, as we've already mentioned today, we're discussing rebranding failure to build self confidence. For our listeners, how would you personally define self confidence?
Yeah, that's always a really interesting one because I think it's a bit personal to people. Like, confidence for some people is the idea that they could sit in a meeting, raise their hand, and share a point of view. That's confidence. Confidence is also the ability to be sat at home on your own and not feeling bad about yourself, or being able
Mm,
to feel bad about yourself, but you think, do you know what? Actually, I can still do this. So it's an internal narrative that allows you to live life as your full fat self and not turn the volume down on yourself because we live behind those two prison bars. I'm not good enough. People like me don't do things like this. It's a smashing of those bars to I am enough and people like me do things like this. That's the reframe of self-confidence.
exactly, yes, smashing those bars. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But before we do, we're going to do some sort of like rapid fire icebreaker
Oh,
questions. So, our
terrible at this.
listeners
I'm
can.
really looking forward to outdoing my last terrible attempt at this.
All right, so this is just for
This
listeners and my own personal curiosity just to get to know you a little bit better.
Go for it.
So, the first question, they're all quite artsy related. But the first question is, what is a book that you recently finished or are currently reading?
Oh, so many, because I read about 18 at the time, but I am
Wow.
rereading. Yeah, I know. I just have books everywhere because I'm a really kind of avid reader. But I'm rereading, in fact, I'm looking at it now, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And I love this book because it's about meeting people where they are,
Mm,
whether that's marketing or selling or whatever it is, or just being a person. It's about seeing what's behind the front and connecting with people on a real human level. So the book actually talks about how to build a website and how to do marketing and how to enroll people, but it
mm,
works whether you're a parent and a toddler, or anything else. So I love that book, Building a Story Brand, Don Miller.
Wonderful. I have to give that one a read. Okay,
Mm.
what is your favorite movie or one of your favorite movies? Because that can be quite difficult.
I do have a favourite movie. It's called Dave. It was, I think it's like 1985 or something like that. And it's Kevin Kline's in it. He looks like the president. He has to stand in for the president. The president's having an illicit affair, but the president has a heart attack while he's there. So he has to take
Ooh,
over the president. And again, it's a movie about Dave meeting people where they are and just being a genuine human. So it's been my favourite movie 4 years. I love that film.
that's
Sigourney
so
Weaver's in it as
awesome.
well.
Oh, yes, legendary. I will have to watch. I've never heard of that, so I think I will definitely need to add it to my
Old,
list.
old film, but it's stood the test of time.
Not that old, not that old. My parents will will shun you for that. Okay, so obviously besides our own, what is your favorite podcast?
Oh gosh, again, so many, so many. I'm gonna go with so I'm gonna go. Oh, it's a bit niche though. I don't know. I
That's
don't know if
okay.
anyone else would have
We want niche. We want
Okay,
niche.
this tiny podcast, right? And it's just like it's just, it's my nephew runs it, and it's talking about
Oh,
football, English football, soccer, which I don't even care about. But he interviews his friends about matches, and they give their own commentary,
oh,
and it's just it's very niche. But what I love, even though he's my nephew and I love him obviously, what I love is just again is this just honest conversation of them chatting about a passion that they have. And
mm,
even though I have no passion for football, I'm drawn into this conversation. So
yep.
it's insane. And he hasn't done any episodes for a while because he's got a girlfriend, so he hasn't got time now.
More
But
important things.
listening to the old issues, it's a world into the kind of, like 25, 24-year-old men that I have no, it's not my world. And it's just, I love being in a place that I'm different to. So
Yep.
yeah, my nephew's football commentary.
Oh, that sounds so nice. No, that is a testament to his people skills right there. If you can just have friends on a podcast and make it a podcast, that is skills right there. Okay, what is your favorite documentary?
Oh, I love documentaries. So anything, David Attenborough, I could just sit and watch stuff about
Mm,
I am blown away by the planet we live on. So David Attenborough is just like standard for everything. But I really, I like mindset shifting documentaries. So Blackfish on Netflix about Shamu the killer whale and SeaWorld. That documentary was like baseline shifting. And I remember I
right.
took my daughter to SeaWorld when she was, because I never went, I didn't go on holiday. I didn't have a family when I was a kid. So here I
Yeah.
am creating all these experiences. So I took her there and I took her to SeaWorld. And I remember trying to volunteer because they were asking for a child to sit in a boat and be pulled round by one of the killer whales or a dolphin or something. I don't know. And I remember going, me. And I look back now and think, but I remember that helps me remember that people make decisions based on what they know at the time. They do the best they can with the resources they have at the time. And actually it's really good to change your mind. You got to forgive yourself and move forward. So I think Blackfish for that reason.
Interesting. That sounds so good. Do you know where can I watch that?
It was on Netflix, but if you go on
Okay.
YouTube, it's well documented and
Yep.
I mean, be prepared. It's kind of my TED talk, but longer and about a killer whale.
That sounds like a really good combination. I'm totally down for that. Okay, and our last question is who would be your famous role model?
Who's my famous role model? So I'm going to say Will Smith. And I know that that's a bit of an odd choice right now. But I also know that when you are navigating unresolved trauma, you have low emotion regulation.
Mm.
And I'm not condoning what he did. It's outrageous. You can't go around slapping people anywhere, let alone at the Oscars. Outrageous. But I also see three moments, in his life. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, when he does that scene where his dad doesn't take him away, and he gets this
Mm.
anguish, which was kind of autobiographical slightly. The moment on the Red Table Talks where Jada was talking about having an affair and he was welling up, and then the moment at the Oscars. And
Yeah.
those are like three moments that belay how much work has gone into him not being like that 24/7.
Yeah.
So I know that we can look at this and there's a lot that went wrong. There's a lot that needs to be looked at, obviously. But the way that he navigates past trauma and doesn't let that become a script for his future
Mm.
is inspirational to me. And what happened at the Oscars was abhorrent, and both are true. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to go with Will Smith.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you brought up an interesting point, and he's just released a book, or he released it a while ago now, actually. I probably shouldn't say just released it, but yeah, he released a book which I highly recommend people to read if you want to, yeah, understand that mindset a little bit more. And I think it's just a really interesting insight into his life. And he's done some great movies. We got to give him credit there. He's an incredible actor. My mum has loved him since like the day of dawn, so we got to give him some creds there, that's for sure. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for answering those questions. So we're gonna go into a bit more of a deep dive now. So we're gonna track back to self confidence and resilience now. So our first question, which I think is going to frame the rest of the conversation, is why is resilience so important in our lives?
It's because it's not a choice. It's the nature of the planet.
Mm.
It's inbred into us. And depending on where you are in your life, in your story, depending on the factors around that you have no control over, resilience is like a muscle. It can be enhanced if you practice it. It can be diminished if you don't. But it's the reason you're not dead right now. So I know that people would say, "Oh, I'm not very resilient," or recently I am very resilient, and then COVID hits and we find out how resilient we actually are. Because
Yeah.
resilience is not just the ability to keep going, it's it's the time between falling on the floor and getting back up again. That's the secret to resilience. It's reducing that from years to months to weeks to days to hours to minutes, possibly seconds. So it's important because it's like breathing. It's not an optional extra. It's
Yeah.
part of who we are. And
Exactly.
instead of fighting against it or kind of saying I'm not, it's like saying I'm not Jennifer Lopez. That's true. I'm not a resilient
I
person.
wish.
That's a choice. That's a choice. So it's up until now, my resilience hasn't been high. From now on, I would like it to be higher.
Mm.
So it's about you living your life, at full volume, not muted, really.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great definition that you've given there. And so, leading into that, a lot of people think that resilience means being immune to like stresses and adversity and being immune to the struggles. What are your thoughts on this misconception?
I'd say it's the opposite. You do that walk where you go over hot coals, and people used to walk over and go, cool wet grass, cool wet grass, cool wet grass. I've got no respect for that activity. You're telling yourself something different. You walk across there and go, burning hot coals, burning hot coals, burning hot coals. That's when I have respect for you. Because the
Yeah.
whole thing is, if you are like disassociation, as a victim of abuse when I was a child, one of the things I am queen of, left to my devices, is disassociation.
Yeah.
So I forgot all about my past as a 5, 6 year old, 5, 6, 7, until I was about 11, and then it all came flooding back, and I felt
Mm.
so stupid that have I made this up? How could I forget this? But your brain disassociates; it switches off so that you can function. It's like what your brain is almost not on your side. All your brain cares about, all your amygdala cares about, is keeping you alive and not
Mm.
burning too many calories thinking about things. So we're kind of set up to fall into stereotypical blaming ourselves ways of being. And when it comes to reframing and telling other stories, you've got to be able to be in the moment. It's not saying everything is awesome. It's saying, you know what, everything isn't awesome,
Yeah.
but I'm in control of my own story and the pen's in my hand.
Yeah.
That's resilience. Everything is awesome, everything's fine. It's not good. Disassociating from bad also means you disassociate from good. So you can't experience as much joy or fulfillment because you're living here. It's like being on antidepressants. You can function, but there's a
Mm.
window of tolerance that you can't go above because you're not in the moment. So not being in it, that who wants to live a life on mute? I don't want to have that experience. It's like when you go out with your boyfriend, you get a boyfriend and your heart's so full of love, and then he dumps you for your mate, and then you just but then next week you're all right again and you get
Yeah.
another boyfriend. That's resilient. Do you know what I mean?
That's
We are
resilience.
hardwired. We are
Yeah.
hardwired to engage in the highs and the lows.
Yeah. No, completely. And I totally agree. And you've brought up a really interesting point there with the disassociation. And I think I've been very guilty of this in the past in terms of things that have happened where it's just like that survival mode that your brain goes into, where it's like, okay, where we are just going to completely ignore this and just go full robot. And that's a really hard thing to overcome. And it's a really hard thing to push past.
I just invite you into a reframe on it's something you've been guilty of. It's not a bad thing. It's not like stealing your kid's chocolate, right? It is a survival technique that your
Mm,
brain and your body takes on in order to get you through.
yeah.
The thing is, it's you can surviving is basically breathing, right? It's like basic low level being on a ventilator. You exist, but that's not where we're meant to be to stay. It's just where we are for a while in order to keep moving forward, in order not to stop, in order to be able to level up again later. It goes suffer, survive, thrive, drive change.
Yeah.
So it's not a linear journey. When we're in survival mode, when we're in disassociation, it's like this is how I am surviving right now. I won't be here forever, but right now this is where I will be, and this is an act of courage and bravery. So it's just reframing that around, oh, I'm guilty of it. It's like, no, this is how my brain keeps going, but I am going to always look for higher and better.
Yeah, exactly. And just, yeah, aiming for that. And yeah, thank you for reframing it because it's something
Oh,
that
it's an
we,
invitation because our words.
oh, definitely 100%. And I think and everyone at some point in their lives has had to work through something that they have, especially if you've gone through anything in your childhood where you sort of, your brain has separated that part and that event from you. Um, and it's so interesting. I personally found it so interesting when you come out of that sort of disassociation and you sort of come into sort of your normal emotions or what's classified as your normal self. And you just sort of get kind of shocked of like, oh, that was the survival
Yes.
strategy that a lot of the time am not aware that I'm in. And I think in those moments you have to be really easy on yourself.
Compassion is king in those moments.
100%. So you've highlighted the importance of confidence in building resilience. Can you explain just a little bit further the relationship between these two things, self confidence and resilience?
I often think it's a triangle actually between like resilience, well-being, and confidence.
Yeah.
Those three. And you can have a really strong sense of well-being, but no confidence. And that's going to in turn affect your resilience. So it's paying into the bank account of each of these three that builds all three of them up. It's like a stool. You can't, if one leg's shorter than the other, you're going to fall off it. So the relationship between the two, for me, they are interdependent in a way, but confidence comes because you failed and reframed. So your experience. I always talk about a failure ladder. You know, the sides of a ladder, the rails.
Mm.
Imagine those with no rungs in it. Your rungs are in a basket. So what you do is you fail. Great. Now you've got a rung. You put the rung in the ladder. Now you've got something to stand on so you can fail again. And then you put another rung in. Now you can go
Yeah.
up two and fail again. And the distance between the rungs is the learning. And if you fail enough times because you're aiming for it and getting out of your comfort zone, then you will reach success at the top. But if you
Yeah.
don't fail, you haven't got a ladder. You've
Yeah.
got two legs. That's it. So the confidence to keep going once you've and writing that story that isn't, oh, I'll never do this. You know, like when a child starts to walk. My son, he started walking at 9 months old, and he had an older sister, so he would get up and try and walk and fall flat on his face. If at that point I'd said, "Give it up, son, you'll never be a walker," you know, I go, yeah, come on, try again. And that's the link between confidence and resilience. It's someone holding a vision of success for you when you're not able to hold it for yourself,
Yeah.
or when it looks impossible now, but you know that that's now. It's no now. It's not no never.
Mm.
So it's the like people keep talking about hope, and I always think hope's good. I'm down with hope, but expectation's better. And the difference between hope and expectation is faith.
Yeah.
Faith comes from confidence. So I think it's, we can talk ourselves in or out of feeling these things, but at the end of the day, I've tried being miserable. I've tried giving up, and it sucks. So if
Mm.
I'm going to be on the planet, there are going to be some changes around here. I mean, that's, what else am I going to do? Just sit around and
Yes.
go, well, see how it goes.
100%. And I love that, yeah, that metaphor that you put there with the ladders and the rungs. And yeah, that's an incredible way of looking at it. I really love that so much. So in that, you did touch on failure, which is something that we all face at some point in your life, even if you've had a very nice, cushy life. You at some point have been faced with failure. So majority of the population, or at least I'm going to say all of humankind, you want to achieve success and avoid failure. That's the general kind of majority opinion. But for some people, the fear of failure becomes such a significant psychological threat that it starts to deplete your own confidence. So, how does fear of failure influence our self confidence, and how do we rebrand that?
Yeah. It's the story we start with. Like, success without failure is like risotto without rice. You ever tried to eat risotto without rice in it? I mean, I'll take the risotto and I won't eat the rice. Well, good luck to you, 'cause I don't know how you can what are you eating, air, liquid,
Yep.
a bit of mushroom? The whole point of this is, again, like we said at the beginning, it's not about trying to avoid failure because there's a potential of pain.
Mm.
It's trying to say, so when failure happens, what do I do? It's knowing what to do when you don't know what to do. And
Yep.
I think this is part of the problem. We go into a job or a relationship or a role expecting, hoping that everything's going to go great, planning for that. And yes, we should be excited about it. But I kind of, hope for the best and plan for the worst. But what that does, it means that I can future proof myself. So when I take someone on, when I hire someone, I say to them, right, at some point, I'm going to fire you. So what I'd love us to do is to have a conversation and think about how we're going to react when that moment comes. Like, we drift apart or you go somewhere else, but you're going to leave or whatever. Let's decide now how we are going to handle that conversation so that when we get to it, it's not this emotional, oh my gosh, this is awful. And it's amazing because you're like, well, you've just hired me. So I don't know, maybe I'll say, okay, so it'd be nice if we could talk about it beforehand and both have a plan for afterwards. I'm like, yeah, great idea. So we are planning for what happens, not if things go wrong, when they do. When
Yeah.
people say, but what if I fail? I can go, I can help you. I've got this solved. There's no if, it's when. So
Yeah.
rather than spending your energy worrying about if things don't work, things are not going to work. Things are going to be different to how you planned. So what do you do when things go differently? And that's if you start thinking about that, actually, it does become a reframe, because you're like, so I'm in, like my marriage is the thing I'm most proud of in my life, even though I've achieved all this stuff outside of that. I'm most proud of my marriage.
Oh,
It's so much. It's absolutely brilliant, and I love
that's
it.
lovely.
So but I have a plan. What if my marriage doesn't go right? What if it goes wrong? Well, my plan is, before we get anywhere near that, I want things in place. I want strategies. I want communication tools. I want things we can use. So we put all those in place. I want to make sure we're spending time together. So I'm doing a pre-mortem on my divorce. Rather than getting there and going, oh God, it was awful. I'm like, right. So how do I avoid the regret of ending
Yep.
up somewhere without planning for failure? And so how that works for me, I'm so far down the line, is that I actually aim for failure. When I start something new, I'm like, right, come on, let's get the first no out of the way. Let's do it. Let's go for epic failure. Because I know how to reframe and pick myself up again, because I've failed so many times,
Yeah.
and I know it's possible. And I know that every failure is a step closer to me smashing it. So let's fail. I mean, I genuinely, the fear of failure is doesn't make any sense to me, because fearing something that's going to help you go forward, why would you, unless what you want is to
Mm.
stay. It's like fearing, I'm scared of going to get a makeover because I might look amazing, so I'll stay here and not have a makeover. It's just,
Yeah.
and that's fine. If that's your choice, that's fine. But we can't tell a story of, we all want change. We all want things to be better, but everybody's scared of things being different. Everyone's scared of change. We all want improvement, but everyone's scared of change. Well, pick a side. You can have both, but you can't have both at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's that thing of, what do you really want? The triangle
Mm.
between those two. They're intimate. What do you really want? And with my Human First Academy, I actually say to people, if you are happy being stuck, if you don't want to change, if moaning is a strategy for you, don't join, because you will be miserable. That
Yeah.
you'll hate it. I'll feel bad. This is about measurable impact over time. This is about small steps, massive changes. And I pre-warn people, because it's not a case of lip service. We're talking about the only show we get to perform in. The only experience we get on this planet is this one right now.
Mm.
And so much of my first sort of 30 years were stolen from me. So it's never too late to have a happy childhood. I'm just reclaiming it, reclaiming my time. That's what I'm doing.
Yes. Perfect. And I love that. And I think all good stories, or at least majority of the ones that we hear of, they all start with someone having some sort of big failure or some sort of big thing that was life changing. And I think it's all about
like you said, just sort of reframing it and sort of embracing that failure and just being like, okay, from this, what am I going to learn? Like, how can I build and improve? Because if you don't fail, then you don't move, you don't make that movement. So yeah, that's a great way of pairing it back to that way that we think about ourselves and our self confidence and that fear of failure. And it's like you need to move forward so that you can have that self confidence to be your better self,
Yeah, yeah.
which is so
And like with
important.
anything, if you do it, if you take the risk, however, whatever that risk is, saying yes, saying no, every time you do it, it shaves 2% of fear off for the next time.
Yep.
But it's like, eating healthily. If you have a pear one day, live on nachos, and then have a pear 2 weeks later, don't expect to be Usain Bolt. The regularity of it that keeps him looking as fit as a butcher's dog. So it's the consistency that's important too.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned earlier your TED Talk, which I loved and I highly recommend everybody to watch. And in that, you explain a lot about your childhood experiences and your time on The Apprentice. So experiencing those struggles and those failures, has this led you to have like sort of low self confidence at random periods in your life and random periods of time? Because I think a lot of people just think, oh, okay, you have the bad event and then it's just up and there's no kind of downfall. So how have you sort of coped with those sort of random little downfalls that you have after those sort of bigger failures?
Yeah, so they're not random, it's constant. It's not random. So low self-esteem wasn't low self-esteem, low confidence wasn't low confidence. It was my way of being. That's like I believed from when I was little, because I was like beaten and abused, and I was the eldest of six, and my entire existence was reliant on, the only use I had was to take care of my brothers and sisters. So by, you know, 7 years old, I was in charge of my 5-year-old brother. By 9 years old, I was in charge of two babies, because the 1 year old and a baby. By 11 years old, I had four of them to take care of. And so my life was about, my value was based on use. So because I could look after the babies, get them dressed, steal food for them to eat, teach the older ones how to climb over the fence to the cake factory to get scraps out of the bin, I had a use. I was babysitting from the beginning. I was the one who knew how to make the bottles. And so my parents could go out and go off drinking, and they, I was in charge. So my story became, you earn your value. And the moment you're not valuable anymore, you're gone. And at the same time, I'm being regularly sexually abused by my stepdad and other men. So that it's being eroded completely. And I know that the moment I voice any sense of injustice, I get beaten. And my stepdad promises he will kill me if I ever say anything. So I'm in this really kind of tight world of kind of influence, where there is no way of being apart from the way I'm being. And what happens with that is that I always talk about the 3 M's that you need to make a change. And that's mentors, mates, and mindset. And my mindset during there was one of survival. And it is the reason I'm still here. But there became a point for me when I realized that what he was doing to me is how women get pregnant. When I started secondary school, we had the sex ed talk, and I watched this video and I just died. With all my friends around me, I just died. Because my thing was, I am so stretched. I can no longer survive in a world where I'm pregnant. I don't know what to do when that's the case. And that's what triggered me to run away at 11, live on the streets, live with a pimp. I mean, the self-confidence you need to be able to exist in that world has to be on the ground, to be a belonging to someone else, to not be human.
Yeah.
So that was embedded and ingrained in me. And that became the truth about me, according to me and according to others. But there was also this constant question of a sense of injustice by my mentors. So I was lucky enough, as I say in my TED talk, to have like 5 everyday heroes and a cast of accidental saviors, adults who didn't do massive things, but just stood for me. And it's like those birthday cake candles that you light and everyone blows it out and then they come up again. They're great. I love to punk my kids with those when they're
Yeah.
little. Like, it's like that. It's like they lit something in me So there's a flame. It will go out frequently. It will go out because it would be pouring water on it and being in an ocean, but then it would dry out and come back alight. And it was those mentors that helped me eventually shift that mindset. And the people I surrounded myself with when I got out of, gangs and street life and I got into education, you just see a different group of people that I would have dismissed before. I would have done more than dismissed, but you just start to think. That's why my big thing is I want to be with people I'm different to, not people who are different to me, like I'm the gold standard of human, people I'm different to. So I don't have many mates who are, brown with hair extensions. I have a lot of friends who I'm different to because I know that's a technique for learning and growth. So the bouncing back from the self-esteem isn't something that happens quickly, and it's not something that you go from being a submissive doormat to, I am power pose. It is something that is a story that changes, where when you realize what you're actually in control of and what you're not. There's a lot of things you can't control, but you can control the way you show up as an adult who is living freely without not being in a toxic relationship or an abusive relationship with a partner. You can control how you show up. So when I started to kind of gain those little things, that was the realization that I realized that I don't have to let my past affect me. Chris Akabusi is an athlete, an Olympian for the UK, and also a speaker. And he always says that the past is for reference, not for residence. And I think that is the big shift. Once you make that shift, or you even look at that shift, things start to fall into place, and the time between you bouncing back becomes easier and better. But the last time I wanted to be dead was in my first year of university. That's the last time I didn't want to be alive anymore. Which is I'm 51, so that's a real win for me. Like alcoholics celebrate being sober. I celebrate not wanting to die. I genuinely do, because that was just, I didn't even see it as suicidal. It was just the way I was. It's like it made sense with the life I had not to want to exist. That was a rational and logical choice. Because the life I had was awful. So it's not, it's not rocket science. Let's just stop existing. But I don't feel or think like that anymore. And that is the reframe. That's I can't imagine feeling or thinking like that.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's so inspiring. For those who are going through that struggle and those who are currently experiencing something that has diminished their self-confidence, and like what you brought up before in terms of they're struggling and their only logical kind of option at this point is to just sort of end it. And just kind of, it's the only logical option at this point is to die. So what advice would you have for those people who are in that situation? And what kind of advice can you give them for how they can build self-confidence or rebuild self-confidence?
It's so hard because, like I say, this is my lived experience and books I've read and things I've watched and coaching I've done and had. And so it's not, it's not like I have the expertise to be able to say to someone, do this or do this. I know what it is to be in that state, and it's not, it's logical and illogical at the same time. It's logical and it requires a depth of despair that not everybody gets to experience. So I wouldn't want to presume to. What I'd want to do is stand in that chaotic fire with someone, and I can't do that because I'm, trying to keep myself together. So there's something around in that moment. You do have a choice, and I think getting to the choice was liberating. It's like enjoying something that's really bad for your health, because it gives you the endorphins that you need, but at the same time it's destroying you. And for me and lots of people I've spoken to, you get to a point where you feel you have no choice, you have no option. The only choice you have left is whether you stick around or not. And it's such a glorious space to be, where you have choice, that it's a place we return to, we think about, we obsess over, and sometimes we take a decision, we make a choice. But the thing about that is that's not our only choice. It's never our only choice. And if you're trying to do it on your own and you're not connected, even the biggest introvert, we're still humans, we're designed to be in community. If you're trying to do this on your own, I don't know how that works. I don't know how that's possible. I only know that when you're doing witness, when you're with other people, when you find someone that you trust and you take the risk, the bigger choice, when you take the risk of trusting them and talking to them, suddenly you have an entire world of perception and perspective that you can't have on your own.
Yeah.
Because as smart as you are, you're one person. As old as you are, you're one human. So the depth of, human existence and knowledge is not stored in your brain. So at the moment you bring one other person in, you have a different perception. And there's something around, if you get like I spent more time deciding which hair extensions to buy than which boyfriend to have at one point. Now, you tell me which one has more impact on my life. So if you're going to take that decision, then do the research. Do the research. I have a friend who used to struggle with alcohol, and it was hard. It was hard to watch him, and he would do things that go against his and my integrity, cheat on his partner. So it was just awful. And I remember him coming out of rehab and saying, how's it going? He's like, it's great, Jaz, it's great. It's great. I'm not going back to that life. I said, great. What's going to be different this time? He said, oh, this time I'm going to try really hard. I'm like, I'll see you in 6 months. Because it's this thing. If trying hard was a thing, right, we wouldn't need rehab. We wouldn't ever be no addiction if trying hard worked.
Exactly.
There is more choice available to you than like.
Yeah.
So for me, it was engaging with other people and letting them hold a truth about me when I had let go of the truth about me and just lived. I was swimming in lies. And that's what made it kind of the only choice you have is to leave. And that's a lie. That's not the only choice you have. So, but I don't know how people get out of it on their own. The self-confidence comes from the story you have, having gone through that and gotten to the other side. That's a story people would fight and pay to own without the pain, but you did it the hard way.
Yeah.
And that is a story that, I've got a friend at the moment who does Ironmans. He's really fit. And he was cycling the other day, just practicing, and a lorry knocked him off. He didn't turn up for a meeting that my husband had with him, and he's in intensive care. His jaw, they've kept him sedated because his jaw is so broken. It's too much pain. He's got a wife, he's got 2 young children, and life, bam, like that.
Yeah.
We all think, oh yeah, I'm going to live to 100. Well, let's hope. But the reality is that at any point, at any time, it can be taken away. And I sent him a text yesterday, even though I know he can't see it, talking about my confidence and faith in him coming through this and surviving the struggle of rehabilitation. And not only that, going on to thrive and drive change for others with this story that he will tell that will encourage others who feel like it's the end. That's where I choose to be. That is where I choose to be.
Yeah.
And I have no control over what happens, but I have control over how I show up for myself, for him, for family. Do you know what I mean? I have control over that. So this is what I choose. And I am happy to be wrong. I am happy for him to get over it and go, I'm never talking about that. I am happy to be wrong. But this is what is required right now.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm showing up and doing. So it's the choice aspect the whole time. We have a lot more control than we think we do.
Definitely. Yeah, I think. And yeah, we've always gone back to, like what you said, just reframing it and how can you use this to help yourself and help others. And this goes into my next question. When the story isn't about us and it's about others, how can we help others and how can we help them rebrand failure or reframe failure and their thinking to be more confident?
Well, the story's always about us. It's always about us. You can teach a good game. You could, like, I used to teach, right? I used to be a teacher. I had 2 things I hated. One was infant recorder practice, which is like putting a load of rats in a bucket and strangling them and having to have that full blast on earphones. Hated infant recorder practice. Lunch, I'd do anything to get out of that. And the other thing was taking my kids swimming, because the way it works in the UK, no schools have pools. So we get the kids ready. They're 5 and 6 years old, right? Getting them in the coach takes hours. You've got to fasten all their seatbelts. We get there, they get undressed. They've got to put these stupid swimming caps on, which is like trying to get a nailed jelly to a wall. So we finally get them in the pool. They have 5 minutes to swim. 5 minutes. Then it start the whole thing again. Get them out. You get them dressed. No one knows where their knickers are. I've got 13 pairs of knickers. How do you not know if you've got your knickers on? I mean, just have you got your knickers on? It's not hard. So I'm still scarred, as you can see. It's still traumatic for me.
School is traumatic.
Just like, why are we doing that? Let's all just not swim. Let's just not go near the river, just in case. But there's this kind of whole story of the effort and everything that went into it. And the thing is, I had the lowest swimming group, right? And I'm not a swimmer. I choose not to swim. I don't like getting my hair extensions wet. I don't mind it now, but I'm not a fan. Don't like swimming.
Yeah.
So I know how to swim because I've seen a YouTube video and I'm a really good teacher. So I spent a year standing on the side of the pool with blue shoes on, teaching my kids to swim. And by the end of the year, they could swim like 5 meters with a float and someone holding them, whatever the certificate was. I can teach people how to swim without getting wet. But is it the same with resilience? No. Is it the same with confidence? No. Is it the same with having a growth mindset? So I used to, I went on to, when I left teaching, I ran my own literacy consultancy, and then I was asked to do some growth mindset training with leaders and staff. So I would go into schools and do that. And it was at one point I was sort of telling them how to encourage their kids to have resilience and have confidence. And as I was doing it, I was realizing the people I was speaking to did not have a growth mindset themselves. And I suddenly thought, literally in the middle of a course, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Because I'm teaching you how to fake it. Now that's completely against my integrity. Yeah, I can't do that. And I changed what I started to do. And I remember one of the leaders coming over and saying, I thought this was a course where I could, take some tips and get better at teaching. But you seem to be talking about a complete mindset change. And I'm like, yeah, I am. Because if you want to change someone else's story, you better be sucking it up and living it yourself first. It's all right trying to encourage someone to be brave while you're hiding in the cupboard. It's like, yeah, just go for it. It's being a superhero is 95%, believing in yourself. And then at the funeral of the superhero, turns out being a superhero is not 95% believing in yourself. It's like you can't go up against them. Yeah, I think you're great. You could do it. I'm just going to stay here where it's safe because I'm terrified. But you're going to be fine. That smacks of a lack of integrity, truth, and care and compassion. So I like it seems like such a cop out, but if you want to make a change in someone else, the best and highest thing you can do is yourself. Do the work. Do the work. It's like people say when they meet me and see talks, go, what? They always say, one, you're inspirational. And I go, thank you. What have I inspired you to do? Because inspire is a verb. If I've just piqued your interest, that's not inspiration. That's you going, oh, that's amazing. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do more of or less of? What small shift are you going to make? That's what I'm interested in. And the other side of it is, the other thing that people say to me is like, oh, I want to be like you. And I'm like, really? This is 40 years of work. Do you want to do that? Because it's a lot. If you're wanting that sort, well, yeah, okay, I can see that's an attractive proposition. But that's not what it looks like. So in order for me to show up for my own children, the people that came out of my vagina, the people I care about on the planet, for me to show up for them, I have to do the work on myself.
Yeah.
Like I've got a friend who's always on a diet and she puts pictures of herself on the fridge. She writes messages like, you fat cow, on the biscuit tin. She's got a 12-year-old daughter. It's just videoed. It's all being videoed and recorded. And I'm like, you cannot ignore what it's like on the other side of you. And that's why my TEDx talk resonated. It's not me I've got no answers, but I've got a bag full of questions, but I'm prepared to stand in the chaotic fire with people who are at that stage going, I don't know what to do next. I have no confidence. I am not resilient. I failed. I don't know how to get back up. I will stand with you there, not stand at the back and shout some instructions. I will stand in the arena with you. And that is more powerful than anything you could encourage or partake.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that part of the TED Talk, I'm just trying to remember exactly what you said, but you were explaining some of the things that you've gone through. You were like, if this sounds like I'm telling your story, then don't worry, this is a safe space. And I've got you, we've got this. And that part of that, I was just like, that's so powerful, because the thing that I think people want most is just that comfort that somebody understands what you're going through and you're going to make it out of this. So yeah, I think that's being an ally and being there with them is the most powerful thing that you can do for a person.
I call it wisness. Some people do things to others, some people do things for others, and some people do things with others. And the greatest of these is with.
Yeah.
But it costs you the most. So, how committed are you? It comes down to.
Exactly. Yeah. And especially if you've got kids or family members or just best friends, I've been through everything with my best friend. Shout out to my best friend Ava. We've been through everything together, like everything, like floods, rehab, graduation, abusive boyfriends. Like we've been through everything together. And she is just that one person who I know that if anything is happening, she's going to be right there. And I'm always going to be
Yeah.
right there for her. And that is just such a powerful thing. And you speak about, in the talk about people stepping up to be that person for other people. And it's hard and it can be difficult to comprehend, but it's so powerful if you can be that person for somebody, even in just the smallest way. Just
Yeah.
changes the game.
It does. And it is the small ways. It's not giving up your life, selling everything you own and walking naked through the streets going, I will be with you. It's just like when somebody says to me, oh, someone I haven't seen him for a while and, oh, my dad died or my brother died. And the British thing to say is sorry, as if you had anything to do with it. But sorry is oh, I'm so sorry. And please don't talk about it because I don't know what to say and I don't want to get it wrong. I don't know what to say and I don't mind getting it wrong because I care about you. So I'll say, I don't know how you're feeling or what you're going through. I don't know how you're navigating this, but I am glad that you've told me and I will stand here with you.
Yep.
That's my
That is so
response.
powerful.
It's a bit better than sorry. So
definitely.
you don't have to have it right before you put yourself out there. You have to be willing to put yourself out there.
Yeah, and no one expects you to get it like bang on perfect. Like
No.
you're allowed to make those mistakes and ask questions and be there for that person in the ways that you're able to be. And I think that's just so important for everybody, no matter who you are. I think everyone can take something away from this. So thank you so much. That pretty much brings us to the end of it. Thank you so much for being here today, Jaz. It has been such a pleasure. I think no matter who you are or where you're listening from, I think everyone can get something out of this podcast, and you are such an inspiration once again. So for those who want to learn a little bit more about you, or I think you mentioned your Human First Academy, where can they look for that?
So my website is always a good place to start. Well, more than that, because I've been on a lot of reality TV shows, that's my hobby. If you put Jaz with one Z and apprentice into Google, you find me straight away. So even though I've got this website I've worked really hard on, I don't know that it's useful because you just Google me. But I do have my TEDx talk obviously is free, and I encourage people to go and watch that as part of reframing their story. It's a good starting point. And then I also, obviously I speak. So if you want to book me to speak or inquire about that, that's great. Go to my website. I'm all over social media, Jaz Ampaw-Farr, and I'm sure you'll share that link. But my Human First Academy is the thing I'm proudest of. After I've spoken or done an interview, people always say, oh, will you coach me? Can I work with you? And I'm booked up to speak like 18 months ahead. So I don't like, my husband runs the coaching and consultancy side of our business. So I don't do a lot of that. But the Human First Academy is about training everything I know, everything I've learned and gleaned. There are courses on imposter syndrome, on resilience, on post-pandemic well-being, or as I like to call it, well-being for idiots, because that's me. And it's like each course is 6-10-minute videos. So it's me for 10 minutes talking you through, and then you can listen to it, read it, whatever, and then there's a little playbook where you join in. So I've designed that and organizations buy it. But now in the academy, it means that there's a goal setting element, and every month you get to hang out with me, and I do a live coaching and training session with whoever is there. So it's really it's a program that, and it's 12 months. It's a 12-month program. And it's £295, which is it's £300, which is it's low priced for a year and 12 group sessions with me and a Facebook group and all the content, because I don't want to put a barrier between people being their fullest selves and finance. It's the thing. Most people's work would say, okay, personal professional development, here's £300. So it's the thing, and it's 12 months from when you start. So it's an evergreen thing, but 12 months. If you start next month, then it's 12 months for you. But people change. I mean, I built it and I'm still like, wow, it really works. I mean, people do make massive changes, leave jobs, leave toxic relationships, get promotions. People live life in that academy. Amazing. So I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud that people are taking responsibility and owning their story.
Exactly. And yeah, that's so inspiring and incredible that you're just making those changes in that people's life. That is, very motivating. So again, thank you so much for being here. And to our listeners, don't forget to like and subscribe or follow on whatever platform you're listening from. And we will see you next time. Thank you again so much, Jaz, for being here.
Thank you. Take care.
Have a good day, guys. Bye.
You have been listening to Bouncing Back, the Personal Resilience Science Insights podcast produced by the Life Management Science Labs. Listen to episodes from LMSL's 10 Life Management Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or other podcasting apps on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps others find us and us grow to bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at pr.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Tia Harmer. Thanks for tuning in.